naturally would meet a lot of people who are like older than us. All of them would have wished they took more risk when they were younger.
I think personal branding is incredibly important for my business because the 3 pillars of mine is authenticity, diversity and inclusivity. So for me it's very important that if I'm representing my brand, how I come across matches up with my own ethos. I'm very prominent on social media, so TikTok, Instagram, all those kind of things. And for me it's really important to show that I'm relatable and what I'm doing is something that is unattainable. And I'm not too far out of touch or out of touch at all with the people that I want to educate, sell to, promote to, all those kind of things.
Well, I think there's 2 ways to define personal branding, right? There's the personal branding you have on the internet, and then there's the personal branding that you build amongst, like, I think your inner, I call it industry circle, right? Now, some people are a lot better at personal branding. I do some, but like, I'm probably not as big of a personal branding guru as like some other people in terms of like, blasting stuff on the internet. I'm personally a little bit more comfortable with, just like, a little bit more boots on the ground, like, building out, there's like, those human connections one bit at a time.
Same. I think like I don't force myself to post on like LinkedIn everywhere, but like if I want to post, I will post. But I think it's all about like telling stories. I do recommend everyone to have a podcast. I think it's not like it's just a relationship you build, and also if you establish a podcast around the topic that you're working in, it helps with like the personal branding.
I think it's so true what you said about like telling stories and building connections that way, because it is cliche to say, but your net worth is your net worth. And like building a personal brand with the people you meet and building a reputation for yourself just by doing things and being accountable and just by being your best self means that opportunities come to you, because people do talk, especially in the startup community. It's a very tight-knit community and people do talk, and the better reputation you build for yourself, the more doors you open, and I think that's the most valuable thing.
I think on my LinkedIn I make a point of highlighting my experience, my expertise, my achievements, all that stuff. So when I message someone, hey, do you want to come on the podcast, or hey, I think you'd be a value customer of Wing, how can we get talking? That builds my credibility. So articles I've written, publications I've made, all this kind of stuff, that's all on there, so I'm credible and it gives me authenticity.
I think personally what's worked a little bit more for me is, I think, my personal branding within my inner industry circle, in terms of how I either organize different events. I think just like build out as many of those warm relationships without an agenda as much as I can, and I think that's how I personally think about personal branding as much as possible. Just like thinking about the conversations that people will have about you.
Absolutely. Everything we do, whether it's business branding or it's personal branding, we are trying to create this connection. We are conveying an image, whether consciously or not. That's another part of the story. And this is why I personally prefer in-person, whatever, to online, because I feel like building a genuine connection, building rapport is so much easier this way.
It takes guts, and it's a skill to learn to actually go up to someone and say, hey, put out your hand and say, hey, I'm Edward, can I talk to you? Right? Exactly, right? Like that's a skill to learn. Like, people are so timid about just going up to strangers.
I used to have this thing called, and I still do now, I call it a non-negotiable. So say for example, when I was at uni, I knew I had to hand in my dissertation, and the kind of student that I was, my non-negotiable was like, we don't submit on the day. And I think creating those non-negotiables in my life, it was like, okay, we're going to start this business, and it's going to happen, and it's just a case of making sure the when is as soon as possible and not delayed because of so many setbacks. So it's like, for me, 18-year-old Aj, I would definitely tell her to just start. I think the biggest thing, that whole fear of failure is, like, the opportunity cost of that fear of failure is a lot of time. It could be a month, it could be a year, it could be 2 years.
Or it could be our whole life.
Literally, like, and that is often the case with so many people.
We like to network. We naturally would meet a lot of people who are like older than us. All of them would have wished they took more risk when they were younger. I would say if you're in that position where you want to do something but you're like feel like you can't, just put yourself in the environment where everyone is doing what you want to do. Naturally, you'll realize that actually it's not as scary as I thought. Why can't I do this as well? And then even it might take longer, your mindset will change and you'll adapt to your environment. So I think environment is really important.
You're entirely right, because I think that fear of failure is really crippling, like especially the London universities. The top London universities, everyone was a straight A student in high school. They've never failed at anything. And so that fear of failure is very real because they've never experienced it. And so taking that step, I think, is quite difficult for a lot of, especially at the London universities. That's why they often go down the spring week and internship paths. It's because it's safe, right? Other people are doing it; they know what they're doing. But if, as you say, if they get in the community of entrepreneurs, then they see that that's a viable option as well.
To build on this crippling fear of always being like the straight A student, what I like to do is I call it learning how to fall. So I started doing it first purely academically. So I would just like take problems that would be like way outside of what I could do and just fail. Because I think learning how to deal with failure is such an important skill.
I think while spending your time, I think learning good practices and like good things such as time management and different tricks for success. I think ultimately everyone has to realize that everyone's kind of like building out their own journey. Like the way everyone gets to success is a lot different for every single person based on what they're good at, the circumstances that they're around, and so I think it's an interesting balance, but I think I would challenge everybody to not worry about what others are doing too much.
So I think my piece of advice would be do it now. If you wait 10 years, your wife's got a boyfriend or whoever, partner, you're having children, you've got a house, you've got a mortgage, your personal overheads are higher. So now, time is now to invest in a business because you've got more disposable income.
Because if we want to go back to work in the future, we can. But
Yeah,
right now,
yeah,
we don't have
exactly.
kids, we don't have pets, we don't have any failing.
If it goes wrong, what have you actually lost?
Yeah.
If it goes wrong, you've built your resume up and you've got more
I
connections.
think